guys, welcome back to the Per Squad podcast. I'm Catherine Mary, and today we have a special guest with us. This is Catelynn Church.
Hi guys.
And as you probably saw from the title, today we're talking about joy in the Lord specifically, and it's the first episode in our emotions series. I'm super excited for this episode, especially because we have such a special guest with us, but also because this is the 10th episode. The podcast has hit double digits, super exciting. So we're going to go through a couple updates real quick and then pray, and then we're going to go and just have so much fun sharing Catelynn's testimony and how she finds her joy in the Lord. Let's get right into the updates. Okay, so we don't have very many updates today because of my injury. I've just kind of been at home doing nothing for several weeks. And also, it's only been 1 week since the last episode because we decided to surprise y'all and have it come out early. Yeah, but basically, I have an MRI in a few days. Well, it would have already happened by the time you guys are listening. But I have an MRI determining, what's going on with my knee. So prayers are still appreciated. And also, you should follow the Instagram if you aren't already. It's at the Per Squad Pod. And if you love Catelynn as much as I do, by the end of this episode, you can follow hers too at Catelynn Church. We will link them in the description, just so you know. Awesome. Okay, we're going to pray and then get into the episode. Dear God, thank you for bringing me these listeners today. Thank you for bringing them to my little corner of the internet, and please help them to be influenced by your word today. Please help them to find their joy in you instead of seeking it in the world, to seek it in the word, and please help them to be satisfied by you. Help us to keep our eyes on you even in the middle of the storm, and let the storms not shift our faith. Amen. All right, so I'm gonna give my little introduction about Catelynn and how we know each other, and then she's gonna share her testimony. But basically, we met on Instagram. She was hosting a little video event, I guess, and it was a church, what was it? A little outfit thing.
Yeah, church fit check.
Yeah. It was
Don't
a
like
little
Friday.
church fit check, and it was on Mother's Day. And at first, honestly, I was just scrolling past, and I think it was Nia who I saw had posted it, had reposted it or whatever. And I was like, oh, that's cool, but I kept scrolling, but then it kept popping up. And I was like, wow, God really wants me to meet this girl, okay? So I finally followed her, and I was like, you know what, this would be fun, so I'm gonna join it. And then we just started talking, and we were DMing with each other, and I was like, wow, this girl is really sweet, and she's super joyful and stuff. And then we exchanged numbers, and yeah, so we've just gotten pretty close from that. But I have always noticed she is actually super joyful, and that's why when I decided I was going to be doing an emotion series, she was the first person that I reached out to, and I was like, hey, can you do joy with me? Because she's just super awesome. But we've talked a lot about her story, and it's just super inspiring, so I'm so excited to have her talk about that today.
So how do I have so much joy? I've been thinking about this since we were trying to do the podcast. And that's just it's kind of hard for me to explain to people because a lot of people ask me that, and I always just respond with that I've always had joy even before I knew the Lord, but then after I got saved, I had a lot more joy. Um,
Yeah.
and a little bit of how I got saved, and a lot of people find it a crazy testimony and story. My parents got divorced when I was very young, so I was 6, and my brother was 4. And then that was pretty difficult, but it wasn't, I grew up with it, so that's
Mm-hmm.
what I've known. And then they both remarried pretty much right away. My dad remarried when I was 10 years old, but she moved up here from Hong Kong when I was 9. And then they married when I was 10, and my mom remarried when I just turned 12, or was turning 12, I think. So I've have four parents,
Hmm.
and I think I how it started of coming to know the Lord was I was just very curious. I was always
Yeah.
curious about where I came from and how the earth came to be, and I knew the science just didn't always sit right with me.
Yeah.
Um,
And your family wasn't like you weren't raised in the church at first, right?
no.
Yeah.
No, I went to a Lutheran church with my grandma, but we just went for Easter and Christmas and whenever she wanted to take us. And I pretty much was in a nursery the whole time, but I always loved being in church. Like, I loved church so much. I loved seeing the people, and they always were so happy on Sundays and the parties afterwards and dressing up for church. It was my favorite. That was my favorite part too. And it came to be where on Christmas I got a Bible, and it was a pink NIV Bible, and I think I was about 11, maybe. Yeah, I was 11. And what was funny to me is my parents, they didn't have a Bible themselves. They didn't read the Bible, they didn't really know much about it. They might have believed in God, but they weren't living for God, so they were very lukewarm. And it was my dad and stepmom who had gave me this Bible, and it was also sitting on my shelf for a very, very long time. And this time, we also found a church, and we still go to that church. So I also was going to Sunday school, and I think that sparked an interest, and I think that's why my parents maybe noticed I wanted one, but they obviously didn't have any Bibles, and they weren't really Christians at the time. And it was just sitting on my shelf, and I thought that one day I was going to read it, and I opened up, and I want to say Genesis, and it just all fell into place. It all made sense of how the earth was made, how everything was created, and I believed it right after I read it, and I knew it was true, and it made more sense to me than science. And I love science. That's the best class I um do in. And so it just all made sense. And then since then, um, I wanted to have a relationship with the Lord, but I knew nothing about it. So I was watching tons of YouTube videos, and I watched like Coffee and Bible Time and Sadie Robinson, and I started listening to her podcast.
I love
And then
Sadie Robinson.
yes, me too. And I
Such a great
started
person.
learning about Christianity and how to have a relationship with God. And I guess the joy, like after just reading the Bible, just gave me so much joy, and I couldn't explain it. Like, I saw joy in everything, and even knowing how I came to be and everyone around me came to me, that it wasn't just a big bang and here we are. It was actually created, in a process, and it was for a reason. And
Yeah.
so finding joy in that, and joy in my identity, that, I'm not just some ordinary person, that I'm actually here for a purpose. And I guess, like, throughout my high school life, though, was a lot of, I went through a depression stage where I was like very far away from God. And during that time, you're far away from God, and I was very changed, and it wasn't who I was. And I still would pray and just ask him, like, can you help me? Like, I don't know what to do. But I wasn't reading my Bible. I didn't want to go to church, but I still went. And eventually he met me again in my room and just spoke to me, and I just felt joy, and I just cried and was like, started reading my Bible again, and I definitely found joy in reading the Bible, because before of who I was, I was very depressed and sad all the time. I wasn't thankful for anything. I got very angry easily.
Did you feel
Um,
like something was missing in your life? Just
Yeah, like
feel.
I felt, yeah, like something was missing. And this was a time where I was already saved, but I fell away from God. This was like my freshman year.
Yeah.
And so that is very different. Like when you already know that He is the answer, but you just don't want to read your Bible. And I don't know, it's very difficult, I would say. Um, and so then I was like, I don't know, I was giving up on the things that I like. Obviously that comes with depression. I didn't want to talk to any of my friends. I was failing all my classes, just things like that. And I thought to myself, I'm like, what have I become? During the beginning of the school year, I had good grades. I, I had really good friends and I planned all the events with my friends. I got homecoming. I was on homecoming court. I had a good relationship with God. And so then looking back on how I used to be, and I just thought that I need to get that way again. And so yeah, I started reading my Bible again. And it's not always about reading your Bible. I mean, that's what helped me the most. And that's what worked for me because that's the thing that got me saved and got me to believe in God. But another thing that I would do is just pray and just cry out to God. And also, sometimes the only thing I could really do was listen to worship music. I didn't want to do anything else. I didn't want to read my Bible. I didn't really want to pray or talk to God because I felt guilty about that I wasn't choosing Him or picking Him to be first, and I knew what I was doing. But the one thing I would still do is listen to worship music.
That's
And I
good.
remember, like on the bus, I would just read in the Bible app and just read Psalms.
Yeah.
And looking back, is Psalms is the one that they say is like the most joyful book you can read. Um, but then I started slowly seeing a difference. I started to become more happier. Um, a lot of my friends, quotations friends, had left my life all at once, but that was now all God's doing.
Hmm.
I was very angry at the moment, but now I'm thankful for that. And so a lot of change happened all at once, but looking back, I knew it was for a reason.
So, well, at the very beginning of like you sharing your testimony, you said that you felt like you've always experienced joy, but you felt like true and like fuller joy once you were saved and once you found Jesus. So, I have a couple of questions that kind of go with that. But I okay, I believe that you've always like felt joy because God has always been there even when you didn't know him, you know?
Hmm.
But I
Hmm.
also strongly believe that there's a difference between happiness and joy. You know, do you
Hmm.
believe that?
Yes, we were actually talking about this at my Bible study a few days ago. Happiness, like my stepmom says, is something that can fill you in that moment, but joy is eternal. Joy comes from the Lord, and that's forever. And so, happiness you can experience, just like a high, but joy is forever.
Yeah.
I don't know if I said
Yeah.
that good
And I
enough.
think it's like, it says this somewhere in the Bible. I think it's Genesis 30, but like happiness is worldly and joy is heavenly, you know? And
Hmm.
joy, just like heaven, lasts forever, but nothing on
Hmm.
the earth is eternal. So like happiness is the same way, you know, like it lasts for only a moment. And like compared to
Yeah.
the eternity of heaven, like the earth only lasts for a moment, you know? So that's really cool. Did you feel like you okay, hang on. So when did you start posting about your faith?
I started my sophomore year. It would have been around February of 2023.
Mm-hmm.
I think. Yeah, it would have been February 2023. But a little bit about my social media journey is since I was 10, well when I was 10 I had a YouTube channel. I've always wanted to be a content creator. I would say I'm more better at YouTube. Um but when I first started out, I kept telling myself I wasn't good enough and then I wasn't going to be like all these other people. But God kind of told me that that's the point is, I am worthy, like he says, and also that I am just an ordinary person and people can relate to that. I don't have to be perfect. And I got over that. And then also, when I was giving up on it this year, I was offered a job at my church to do their social media. And so I took that as a sign to take mine more seriously. And I decided that I was not gonna give up on it again. And then I got offered another job to create a brand for somebody.
That's
And
awesome.
so that's when I realized that this is what God wants me to do.
Yeah, yeah. And I think, like, I mean, I have notes because I did a Bible study. Was it last summer or 2 summers ago? I went to like a Bible camp, and the whole theme for the entire week was joy. And so we did so many studies. And one thing that I had written down was that comparison crushes joy. And I think that you, do you feel like you experience like the joy of the Lord when you're posting about him?
Oh,
Because you
definitely.
can you can like feel joy
Yeah.
when other people feel joy, and when other people
Mhm.
experience Jesus through your posts. And like
Yeah.
that's what I've experienced too in my posts, in my podcasts. And I just love that so much. And it's like, even though other people may be like more experienced or have more followers than us, that doesn't mean that we can't experience joy in what we do, especially
Mhm.
since we're doing it for the Lord, you know? And like
Mhm.
Jesus had 12 followers when he was alive. He had 12, you know?
Exactly.
And he still was the most perfect person to ever live. And there are some people who like had millions of followers and they were like huge sinners, but God loves
Mhm.
us even though we're sinners. And when he like wants us to do something, he's going to call us to do it, and it's like
Mhm.
you with your social media, me with the podcast. I was called to do it. I didn't even want a podcast at the very beginning, but that's what the Lord wanted me to do, and so that was so cool. And it's like, if we are comparing ourselves to these other people, it's going to crush our joy, and
Mhm.
we're just kind of going to lose that. But we got to not be stuck in the ways of the world, because comparison is not something of God's, it's something of the world. And joy comes from the Lord, so we don't want it to be crushed. But yeah.
Yes.
Um yeah, so you started posting about God when you were a sophomore, you said. Did you
Mhm.
feel like people started viewing you differently when you like got super serious about your faith and started posting about it more?
Oh, for sure. Yeah, for sure. Especially everyone in my school knew I was a believer, but they knew I was different than just a Christian. And they saw it in me. And when they see something different about you, most of them want to bring that down. They want to bring that joy out of you. I had people make fun of my sandals and call them Jesus sandals. People just make jokes in front of me. When I started social media, I was only posting for family and friends and people at my school.
Mm-hmm.
So um, they started going behind my back and saying like, "Oh, Caitlin's trying to be an influencer. She doesn't even have that much followers." All this stuff. And I'm not a type of person to brag or say, "Well, look at me now," kind of thing. That's not who I am.
Mm-hmm.
But you kind of just have, and that's why having a good relationship with the Lord has helped me so much because without God, I wouldn't be here today. I wouldn't be able to say the things I have said. And also just because I have that joy from the Lord, I know that what they're saying shouldn't offend me.
Mm-hmm.
And yeah.
Yeah, that's awesome. That's a huge lesson. I'm, still continuing to learn because I tend to be a people pleaser, but that I'm not proud of that because I should be a Lord pleaser. But I shouldn't be concerned on like what everybody else thinks of me because, God is the only judgment that matters and I need to like I'm preaching that, but I need to practice what I preach. Yeah.
Yeah.
So there's a change in identity when you become a Christian or like you start professing your faith. Um, but when you like gain that new identity, you have to shed your old identity. So did you
Mhm.
feel that change like mentally and physically?
I would say yes. It's very hard though because God has always been there my whole entire life, even when I didn't know it and didn't read my Bible.
Mm-hmm.
But there was a time where I fell away from the Lord, and so I can definitely say yes to that. Um, so I'm just looking at the question. A change mentally, for sure. I struggle a lot mentally with anxiety and different just mental disorders that many people struggle with that we can get into some other time. But I have a lot of thoughts in my head, and now I know a lot of Christians will say, that's the devil putting thoughts in your head.
Mm-hmm.
I I think so. Most of them aren't godly thoughts for sure, and I think when I'm closer to God, I don't get as many thoughts like that. I don't get thoughts telling me I'm not good enough, or that my family or friends don't like me. Like thoughts like that, that can really tear you down, and it kind of makes you not want to do anything, or for me, not post content or do the things that I love. But then when I am reading my Bible and I'm praying to God and worshiping Him and getting that joy and getting filled with the Holy Spirit and filling my soul instead of, bringing it down, that's when I have good thoughts saying that I can do anything through Christ, who strengthens me, or I can, um, be strong and courageous because of him, that it says in Joshua 1:9, I think. I
Yep,
don't know
that's my verse
how
of
I
the year.
just quoted that.
Yeah.
Um, and that I'm fearfully, wonderfully made, which
Mm-hmm.
says in Psalms 139.
I just posted a reel today that was also from Psalm 139, and it was the Lord's thoughts for you are more plentiful than the sands in the sea. And I think that's so
I saw
cool. And
that.
we need to have His thoughts in our minds, because there's so many
Yes,
of them. They can fill up our minds. He can fill up all the imaginary voids that are there. He's the only thing missing from our lives because we can never
exactly.
have too much of Him.
Mhm.
But yeah, so we need to fill up our heads of His thoughts. So let's see. You said you felt that change mentally and physically, and like mentally it was hard, to kind of like move on
Mhm.
from because I struggle with anxiety too, and it kind of
Yeah,
it tries to get to you, and sometimes you feel uncomfortable in your own mind, but you need to
mhm.
like kind of drop your mind and take on the mind of God. You know what I mean? And like you're
Exactly.
never you're never going to be as wise or as strong as God is, but he like he loves you and he gave
Mhm.
us the Bible so that we could know what he thinks of us. And so we need to like adopt those words into our minds instead of the insecurities that we might have or the things that other people say about us. Did you feel like there was a change in how you acted? I know you were like posting more about your faith, but like about how you treated other people or how you were treated or how you like saw yourself and how others saw you. So,
I would say definitely how I viewed myself, because I have always treated people nicely. I mean, I hope I hope so, right? But that's what people have told me, and I kind of know that for wholeheartedly. Um but definitely how I viewed myself, because I always viewed myself like, I'm not good enough or I'm too fat. I need this and this to be better,
Mhm.
especially starting social media. Like, I need to redo my room. I need a camera. I need all this. Like, I don't have all these fancy stuff. But I came to realize that I don't need fancy things or I don't um, need any of that stuff, especially that stuff isn't gonna come with me to heaven.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
I think just being myself that I am a daughter of God, of the King, so it makes me a princess, right? And that I'm also um, fearfully, wonderfully made and made in the image of God. And when that really like strikes you and you really know that full heartedly, like it amazes me because I look all around me and I'm like, this God created this and it's so beautiful. And then I
Yeah.
realize, wow, like he created me too.
Mhm.
And I think that's what helped me a lot.
Yeah, that's awesome. And like it's so cool thinking too because it says in the Bible that not only did he create the world and he created you, he created the world for you. He like
Hmm.
created all the flowers in the sky and the birds and the trees and was like, Caitlin would like this, Catherine would like this, you know? And he had like all of us in mind and I think that's so beautiful. Let's see. So you talked about how worship was a huge form of prayer in your life, and you do praise at your church, right?
Hmm. Yeah,
Can you tell me a little bit about
I started on the worship team in February, and what was so funny was I'd be in my car and I'm singing and I'm like, "You know what, Lord? I love singing and I really want to be on the worship team." But I didn't tell anybody.
that? Yeah.
And I come to my pastor and he was like, "So I heard you're a good singer." And I was like, "Yeah, yeah, I sing and I write my own songs. Yeah." And then he was like, "Well, would you want to be on the worship team?" And I was like, "Maybe." And he's like, "No, you start Sunday." And I was like, "Oh, okay." And so then, well, obviously I didn't start Sunday, but I practiced.
Yeah.
I think I practiced for about 3 or 4 Sundays, I want to say. And then I got to sing for Good Friday service. And I sang like, I think it was like 3 nights in a row one time. Yeah, because it was Wednesday for youth group. I put on an Easter night. And then I sang for Friday for Good Friday
Oh wow.
and Sunday. So I love it. My church doesn't really have instruments. We just sing behind tracks,
Uh huh.
but it's it's just so fun and joyful and I love being up there and seeing everybody sing and have a smile on their face. And I would always be in the congregation before I started on the worship team, and I would sing worship with my little sister, and I just kept wanting. I'm like, oh, I want to be up there, like on the altar and singing,
Yeah.
and I finally got to do that. Um,
That's
so it was
awesome.
nice because it was a want, but I didn't push it that hard, and then God
What God
gave me
did.
that at the right
That's so
time.
cool.
So
Like he told your pastor that he wanted you to do that.
yeah,
That's so funny. Yeah, worship is a huge part of my life too. I've always like I listen to K-Love radio. You know, I
yeah.
I've always like been listening to worship music and like my parents do too. So like my mom, it's her favorite thing. And then as I like got older, and I like got a phone and I had Spotify, so I would be like, I'm DJing in the car today, and so I would plug in my phone and I would like choose my favorite worship songs. Instead of like listening to the radio, I would listen to my worship songs, and it was just my favorite thing. And then my mom has always, yeah, I mean, she tells me that I have a great voice, and I mean, a lot of people in my life say that, but I'm just like, I don't really know what I want to do with that. And I used to do musical theater, which was
Mhm.
really fun, but I was like, how can I use my voice for the Lord? And so I'm using my voice just talking on the podcast, but then I have been singing all year in my church. We have a choir, You know, it's not called the praise team or something, but it's like our choir, and then we have someone playing piano, and then we have several guitarists. We have a drummer. One of my friends plays violin, you know, and then different people will come in. Sometimes we have chimes and trumpets and all this stuff, and it's just
That's
really cool. And so I love singing and worship too, and it's awesome. And then let's see, I was going to talk about, I think it's First Chronicles 15. My notes are a little messy today, but like three things about joy is that joy is an expression. Joy cannot be contained, and it is loud and it makes noise. And so the people are like praising God because they were super excited about all the things that He had done, and they were praising God, and they were just being so loud in their praise and their worship. And that's the thing, is like happiness, like, you know, it only lasts for a moment, but joy is loud and it can't be contained. And that's why, like, I automatically think of worship when I think of the joy of the Lord, because it's so, like, easy to, you know, compare the two because they're so similar and there's so much joy in praising, you know, and like concerts, people are jumping up and down. But like praise and worship concerts, those are the best ones, you know? Like I've been to a Matthew West concert, I've been to a Lauren Daigle concert, and those are like the best. And I just love it. I love it so much. Okay, so you said how there was a change in like how you viewed yourself. Do you think there was a change in how others viewed you? Do you think other people noticed your change in identity?
yeah. Like I mentioned, because of that, I actually lost a lot of friends.
Mm-hmm.
Um, because I was different. And it wasn't long after that I went homeschooled for other reasons. But um, yeah, a lot of people would say, that I mean, I never really, I don't party, I don't drink, I don't smoke, none of that stuff. But a
Yeah.
lot of them would say I was more of a buzzkill than before, I guess,
Uh-huh.
um, because I didn't. And another thing was they were wondering why I wasn't hanging out with them, and I had to explain that I didn't want to associate myself with them because they weren't a good example to me, kind of thing.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and I had some people when I started making videos, I had a few reach out to me and tell me that they didn't believe in God, but my videos make them want to read the Bible.
Mm-hmm.
And I had one tell me, because I felt the Lord asking me if she believed in God, and she said that she didn't, but she believed in a higher power. And she said, though, the Bible verses I posted would make her day. Like, it would make her have so much joy and be happy. And, because I would do sometimes daily verses. And I had a few other people reach out to me and say that they wanted to start reading the Bible and start Bible journaling. And
Yeah.
these are all people that I know. They go to my school or went to my school. And I had a few reach out to me asking about what to read to the Bible, and I get so excited, and so I'm like,
Yeah.
here are some Bibles I think you'll like. Here are the pens I like and the highlighters, and I tell them about the Bible journaling methods I use and what to journal in your Bible if you don't know how to journal. And I always just tell them that if you have any other questions, you can text me. I give my number out like it's nothing. So, um, and uh, yeah, it's kind of like with the brand I'm starting, it's gonna help new Christians on things that I wish I would have known, and also help them to read the Bible and Bible journal if they want to Bible journal, and kind of just everything that I wanted to know and I think would be beneficial. Um, so,
Yeah, that's awesome. So let's talk a little bit about that. So you are this brand that we're talking about, you are starting or working on starting your own Christian podcast.
Yep.
So it is
um,
called.
it's called Ask Me About Jesus or Ask Us About Jesus. And I have not started an episode yet, but I kind of already know how it's going to go.
Yeah, it takes a lot of planning. It was crazy how fast
Yes.
mine got up, but almost a
Yeah,
perfect example. I don't even know. That was not me. That was God, y'all.
for sure. Um, so I knew starting my social media, I knew all the things I wanted. I actually knew I was going to accomplish them. I'll get to that in a little bit. But so I was telling my dad that, I may not go to college anymore and I'm going to do content creating full time. And I thought my dad is super strict. He's always wanted me to be a nurse and go to a 4-year college. And I was loving that too until the Lord told me that's not what he wanted me to do.
Mhm.
And so I was super scared to tell my dad this. I thought he was going to be like, no, that's not happening. You're not going to make any money from that, blah, blah, blah. And I knew that this was a God given thing because my dad wasn't angry at me and he listened to everything I had to say. I told him I wanted a podcast and wanted to start a clothing brand and a brand. And then he told me, well, what's your brand's name? And I said, I have no idea. My dad didn't know what a tote bag was. Then I went in my room and I grabbed the one I painted from last summer. And this was during the winter time. And I was telling him all of this and I grabbed it and I showed him it and I said, this is what they would look like. And he was like, well, why don't you name your podcast that? And I'm like, name it what? And he said, ask me about Jesus because that is what I painted on the tote bag.
Oh, that's so cute.
And so then I was like, wait, that's actually a good name. And he started looking it up to make sure it wasn't trademarked. And then he told me that what we all need to do, he told me I need to start making a website and that I need to start finding out how to print shirts and I need to make my logo, all of that stuff. So that day I made my logo from the tote bag. I had a picture of the tote bag, and so then in Procreate, I just traced it and made it look a little better.
Mhm.
Um, and then I started working my website, but that's not going to be for a while, guys. um, and everything is I'm just kind of letting God do his thing and not rushing anything. That's why the podcast has been very slow
Yeah.
paced. I finally got a camera a few months ago, actually last month, but I'm waiting on to get mics, and I am hopefully going to get those today.
Awesome.
And also the place of where the podcast is going to be. We have National Day of Prayer meetings. National Day of Prayer is kind of an event that my community hosts, and we have meetings before that event, but each meeting's at a different church. And so we were supposed to go to this church that's a little bit far from where I live, and I thought to myself, you know what? I don't want to go. I just want to lay in bed. And I realized, and I was like, nope, something's waiting for me there.
Yeah.
Something is waiting for me there. The devil doesn't want me to go. I'm gonna go. And so I went. It was the coolest church I ever seen. It was small like my church, but it had this really nice, it kind of looked like a cafe, and it was just super cute. And then I look over and I see the perfect spot to do my podcast.
Oh.
And I could just see it all fall into place. And I was like, this is amazing. I didn't get a chance to talk to the pastor, so I got the church's number. I left a voicemail. And the next day, the pastor's wife calls me and she said, we would love for you to use our church. And I was like, oh my gosh, thank you.
That's
And so I have a place, I have the name, I know all the ideas, and obviously it's not me, it's God. Um, which getting back to like how I knew I would accomplish all of this, it's hard to explain to people, but I feel like I have God-given visions, and it's hard. I think I was explaining this to a girl that I teach at youth,
Mm-hmm.
because she was wondering about it, and I just had mentioned that I think God gives me the visions so I keep going and so I don't give up, and
Yeah.
that I know that it's not a bad idea and that it will get somewhere. And yeah, so it kind of just all fell into place, and I'm super excited to start it. But there's a lot. I'm working on it, and I'm hoping to like just dive in on my senior year coming up and just do content creating like all the time. So,
Awesome. Awesome. I'm so happy for you. Yeah, it seems like everything's like falling into place, but I love that you're like waiting on the Lord's timing, and not
yeah.
rushing it. Let's see. I had another question. Oh, you mentioned just a couple minutes ago when we were talking about how others saw you differently, that others like started to think like you're more of a buzzkill now than before, and I think that kind of adds on to like that misconception that non-believers have about Christians, that Christian life is boring, but
Yeah.
when you get into it, is it boring?
No.
No. It's so much fun. And like that's because they're seeking these little moments of
Mhm.
happiness.
Mhm.
They're like doing all this like impulse stuff and just all these impulsive thoughts
Mhm.
because they're seeking happiness instead of seeking joy, and they're just doing all these worldly things that are
Mhm.
in the end gonna hurt them instead of chasing after God, and people are like, oh, you have so much time in your life to get serious, just have fun now. And I'm like, but
Mhm.
this is so much fun. I'm having fun creating content, having a podcast, talking
Mhm.
about Jesus. I've never been as joyful as I am when I'm talking about Jesus. And when
Yeah.
like I'm around people and they like start gossiping or like the conversation just turns, I lose it, And it's like, no, no,
Mhm.
no, no, no. Let's not change the topic. Let's not change this conversation because Jesus is joy. So yeah.
Yeah, a little bit about that. Like, I've had so many friends who obviously don't believe in God. And to get real for a second, like, I never experienced these things, but I've witnessed them in partying, vaping, smoking, drinking. Like, none of that is going to fill you up. Eventually, you're going to sit there and realize, what do I do now? What have
Mm-hmm.
I become? And you're not going to know how to get out of it. And it's a
Mm-hmm.
deep, deep, deep hole that you don't know what to do and what your life's going to become because of what you just followed other people doing.
Yeah.
And I've watched a friend come out of that. She's doing a little better, and she's trying to follow the Lord, and that was amazing to see. But after the people, who did those things and then they become saved, their eyes are like opened and they have so much joy. And that's why so many people talk about Jesus.
Mm-hmm.
And a lot of non believers view that as, like, what are you doing type of thing. But it's because we want to share it with other people because it's given us so much joy that we want everyone else to experience it too.
Yeah, the only way to be truly satisfied is to have a relationship with God.
Oh, for
Like
sure.
there are other
Yeah.
things, other people try to fill our voids, you know, other
Hmm.
like worldly things, temptations, all that stuff, but
Hmm.
nothing's really gonna fill you up besides God.
Yeah, and like when people say it's boring, I have had the most fun I've had this year
Mm-hmm.
following God. Like, I couldn't be more happier. I've gained so much friends online, but also in person. I've met like two from my homeschool that I thought was a Christian homeschool, but it ended up not being a Christian homeschool. I still found two believers from that school, and I found came to know another person that went to my public school. And it's so amazing. I got to experience, like, I had this Easter party with my friends, which is on YouTube.
Hmm.
And
Yeah, I think I watched the video.
we talked about God for like 2 hours. 2 hours. Like, it was so crazy, and filmed half of it, but my camera stopped, and it was, like, literally the camera said it was, like, an hour-ish, and we just kept talking and talking, and, um and then we were like, "Okay, we have to quick make our flower crowns because the sun is going down." And so we quickly make our flower crowns. We took pictures outside and we're like dancing, and it was just so fun. And then we ate so much food, and it's just like, and also church parties are so fun. Like, we eat food and we just talk, and it's just so awesome. Like, I don't know, it's I've had a lot of fun this year, including Bible camp and being a
Mhm.
counselor at camp, but also a camper, is I got to meet more friends there. Like,
Yeah,
if you feel like, you're losing all your friends right now, you don't have any friends, I've been there, and now I have more friends than I could ever imagine, and they're all believers, and they all follow the things that I want to follow, which is Jesus.
yeah.
And also, like, just having fun at camp and, get to experience it's camp can be so life changing. It changed,
Oh,
almost
absolutely.
changed me.
Yeah,
So, yeah.
yeah. That's awesome. No, anyone who knows me knows that I instantly my face will light up when you say the name Jesus every single time. And so ever since, everyone's always known that I'm a believer, but
Mhm.
when I started the podcast, it was like my whole school knew immediately. And so everyone was talking to me about it. And some people were like making fun of me for it. But then the
Mhm.
amount of people who were like, this is so cool. And then the amount
Yeah.
of DMs I got being like, thank you so much for spreading the word of God. And people were texting me like, your prayer just moved me to my knees, and all these things. Even though I was also getting hate comments at the same time, it was like, but I'm
Mhm.
doing my part, you know?
Yeah.
And what I've realized is that, I know I can't force anyone to believe in Jesus, but
Yeah.
my part isn't making other people believe, it is
Mhm.
spreading the gospel, you know?
Yeah.
And so
They have a
there
choice.
are people that'll reject Jesus in the world, and that's really sad.
Mhm.
But at least I
Mhm.
know that they've heard his name, because there are
Yeah.
so many people in the world who haven't heard the name of Jesus and they don't know of the miracles that he can do. So my
Mhm.
part is spreading the word of Jesus and saying, this is what he's done in my life, so I know he can do amazing things in yours. And so I love talking about Jesus. My favorite thing to do with my friends is go get coffee and bring our Bibles. We're going to talk
Yeah.
about Jesus all the time. And we've found like little, I mean, I live in a pretty big city, but we've found these little Christian coffee shops that are like in the back of like some strip mall and all this stuff, and we've found these little places, and it's so fun to just go there and hang out. And they're a lot of times they're so cute too, like aesthetic little coffee shops, and it's like
Mhm.
Kingdom Coffee and all this stuff, and it's so cute, and I think it's adorable. And so that's my favorite thing to do when people like text me and are like, "Hey, you want to go get coffee and read our Bibles?" Yes, I don't want to do anything else. Like, I will cancel all my plans for that. Yes, please.
Yes.
So Jesus is joy, and it's so sad that
Mhm.
some people don't know that, but we do, and it's like
Mhm.
it's everlasting. Like the fact that I can wake up in the morning and people are like, choose joy, and that like wake up in the morning and choose Jesus, you know? And
That's
that's
been that's been my motto this
yes,
month.
that's awesome. I love that.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's awesome.
Like, cuz at camp we were also talking about that, but I realized, I'm like, okay, am I going to sit and rot in bed all day and just watch Gilmore Girls, or like,
I'm
I've already
watching
seen
Gilmore
it
Girls
twice.
movie right now.
I know. I
Oh,
wanted to compliment your shirt for like forever
oh,
now.
thank you.
I need one. But
I got it from Etsy.
okay. Um, but I was like, am I gonna, just sit around and watch TV or wake up and scroll on Instagram, or I'm gonna wake up and read my Bible and choose Jesus, like start my day with him instead of anything else and go to bed with, my Bible instead of other things. And
Yeah.
I would be filled up so much more. I would be so much more happier because, the past few days Catelyn's been slacking, she hasn't been reading her Bible, and so she's been angry. And that's why, you
Yeah.
know, when I read my Bible, I'm not angry. I could be even reading, like right now, I'm reading in Leviticus and also Proverbs. I'm sorry, I'm all over
Mhm.
the place sometimes. But in Leviticus, it was so boring for a while that I had to take a break from that and read something else.
Yeah.
But I realized I'm like, even though I'm still reading Leviticus about how all these plans were made, I'm still getting something out of it.
Yeah.
Like I'm still feeling happy. And I like especially when you read about how the tabernacle was made and there's so much detail. Like so much detail.
Yeah.
And I just realized I'm like this is just so real. Like why would they don't need to put how much it was measured or how much they used, how much meters or centimeters, but they did. They put all of that in there of how they
Yeah.
made that, even though they didn't have to.
That's awesome. And I was just talking to my grandparents actually earlier this morning because I went out to lunch with them and we were just talking about how the Bible is so like accessible these days, but it's not just the Bible. Like the Word of God is so accessible because we have the Bible, but we also have like thousands of devotionals. We have
Mhm.
thousands of Christian influencers who are posting
Mhm.
about the word, either like big ones like Sadie Robertson Huff, that we love, or like us, There are like
Yeah.
so many podcasts, there's apps, there's the Bible
Mhm.
app, there's devotional apps, there's Bible journal apps, there's the Chosen TV show, there's movies about people's testimonies, and it's so
Mhm.
accessible. You just have to like choose to spend your day in the word, spend your time with God. And I'm none of those things, are a replacement for the Bible because you should read the Bible too. But
Oh
a
yeah.
lot of times, especially like for beginners in the faith or like kind of lukewarm Christians, the reason why they're kind of like falling out is because it's hard to understand, and people are
Mhm.
like, oh, well, it's been 2,000 years, it doesn't really relate to now. It does. You just have to know how to relate it to now. And then
Yeah.
with those things, like I love testimonies so much because it's so cool to see how the Lord has changed people. And I
Yeah.
have lists of my favorite like movies about people's testimonies because it's my favorite thing to watch. And
Send me
it's
that list.
yeah, it's so awesome. I will. I just I love it. And it really is a choice, because once you know about Jesus and once you know what he can do and you've accepted him, then you have to choose
Mhm.
him. He's not going
Yeah.
to come straight to you because he's patient and he's not going to force you to go to him. You just have to choose him. And once you do, he's going to be everywhere and you're going to be so joyful. But you have to make an effort to make that choice. So,
Yeah, I now it's like funny because like sometimes to non-believers I sound a little crazy, but I see him in everything.
yeah.
Like I could be I'm trying to think of an example. Like I love rain and a lot of times rain or big storms come when I like am on fire for God. Like I don't know how to explain it.
That's so cool.
And another thing was when I first got saved, it was in my room by my desk. And my desk has like this window. And every time I read my Bible, the sun comes out when I'm reading my Bible, and also the trees will just be like so windy. And sometimes I test God and I'm like, is this really you? And every single
You get
time
the
he
lightning
passes the
strikes.
test. Like, So, um, yeah. And then I found out that, my stepmom actually, before she got water baptized, she got baptized online in my room. And she said the sun was really bright too. So
That's awesome.
I just think that's super cool. Like, you find him in the smallest things, which
Oh
is
yeah.
makes you
No, that's
joyful.
so true with like you saying you see God in everything. I mean, that's in I love Zach Bryan, and there's a Zach Bryan song that says like I see God in everything. And it's like I love it so much. One of my friends is like she leads a little faith like Bible study on Sundays, a little Sunday school with like I think it's third graders, and she wrote like that quote or whatever from the lyrics from the song on her wall, and it just was super cute. Um, yeah, and I mean, there's so many responses. Like when people, most non-believers, when they like ask me why I believe in God, they're like, "Why do you believe in something you can't see?" And there's so many answers to that question, but my main answer is, "Why do you think I can't see him?" Like I can, you know? And they're like, "Why are
Mhm.
you so nice to all these people?" Because I see Jesus inside of them. Even if they haven't accepted Jesus, he is in like he created them, and all these people are fearfully and wonderfully made, and that's so beautiful, you know? So
Mhm.
so I do see Jesus. That's how
Mhm.
I know he's real. I see him and I feel him. So yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. There is, like you said, there's so many materials now where, I mean, I think it comes down to a choice. And it's either, you choose Jesus or sin, basically. It's
Yeah.
kind of sad, but I mean, when you choose Jesus, a lot of people think that it's going to be butterflies and rainbows,
No,
but
absolutely not.
it's not. It's not going to be perfect, but it's worth it. I mean, you get to live forever in heaven after you die
I love that.
instead
It's
of
not perfect, but it's
choosing,
worth it. That's the best way to say
oh,
it.
it's yeah, it's not perfect, but it's worth it, and it's worth choosing him and having that joy. You may fall short, but it's better than living in a loop of happiness that fills you up for a second and then you're not happy anymore, or you're depressed all the time, or you're chained to your bed because, of sin or other things in your life. And obviously, when you explain it to a Christian, a new believer, or someone who doesn't believe in God, you don't want to call it sin because they're not really going to know what that what that may be or what their sin may be. So
Yeah.
you could always just say, you know, I can't think of what to say on the spot, but it's yeah, it all comes down to a choice, especially if you watch my favorite movie, God's Not Dead.
I
um,
haven't seen it yet, but it's on my watch list. I will see it.
he explains it so well.
That's awesome.
um, but it's the first movie I kind of watched when I got saved. That's why I like it so
Oh,
much.
really?
And
That's
after,
beautiful.
I listened to the soundtrack like every single day.
I listen to every song on that soundtrack because my dad loves that movie and he has the
It's
soundtrack saved. But another one, because, a lot of people feel like they need visible proof. And I always say, like, faith is believing even what you don't know for certain. But our God is so
yeah,
merciful, he gives us proof anyway. And
yeah.
like when Jesus was resurrected and he came back, like, to the disciples, Thomas wasn't there. And so
Mhm.
they were all talking to Thomas and being like, "It was so cool, dude. We saw Jesus." And he goes, "I'm not going to believe it until I feel where the nails were in his hands and where the cuts were in his sides. And Jesus says, "Oh, you need to feel them? Come here and feel them." you know? And that's so cool that our God is so merciful, you know? And then there's so much proof that's not in the Bible because non believers are always like, oh yeah, it says that about God in your book. Well, how do you know? And I'm like, how do I know? Go watch The Case for Christ. That's how I know.
It's
I saw that movie actually for the first time only like a month ago, but
that
I
movie's
still,
so
it's
good.
so cool. I've read the book before and it's it's just awesome. You know, there's so much proof that's not in the Bible. And a lot of times as Christians, we're like raised to believe that like you have to choose either science or the Bible. And that is not true because they actually go hand in hand. And there's so much proof for God's existence, even though we're supposed to be able to believe without proof. Well, not supposed to, you know, because God knows that we're sinners and we have doubts and faults and all that stuff. But I just think it's so cool. So you guys got our movie recommendations too today.
Like think about it this way is, you know, if I were to be able to see Jesus, sure I would follow him. I'm sure it would be semi the same. But not being able to see him, you have so much faith. I feel like you grow so much because you're really believing in something that again people say you can't see.
Yeah.
But I see him everywhere, but
Yeah,
not,
exactly.
it's
But not directly,
yeah,
you know?
like I would say um it keeps you on your toes
Mm-hmm.
and it really builds up your faith. And it's like another thing when people tell me, well, if your God is so good, then why do bad things happen?
Yeah.
And I, I asked God that question and he sort of gave me an answer. And I said, well, what if? What if no bad things happen? Then what? So we would be left with all this positivity, like everything is good, nothing is bad, which that is how God wanted to be initially, obviously. But because now that sometimes bad things happen, will happen to you and other people around you, you grow from that.
Mm-hmm.
And like for me, if all the bad things didn't happen to me or happened in my life, like a lot of people will tell me, geez, like how are you so joyful after everything that's happened to you? Well, I learned from it. Like I learned from
Mm-hmm.
each every single thing.
Yeah.
And I feel like, if we didn't have any bad things, we wouldn't really call out to God. Because every
Yeah.
time someone's sick or someone needs healing or we go through something really bad, we usually it's finally when we break down and
Yeah.
ask Jesus for help. We ask God for help, and I think I think that's sometimes why bad things happen.
Yeah. Yeah, no, I agree. And a lot of times people will say like God wouldn't give you a battle that like is too big for you or that you couldn't handle. And I'm like, but yes, he would. Because if we could handle it, we wouldn't go to him to ask for advice, to
Mhm.
ask for help, you know? Because he's
Yeah.
willing to give it to us. But if we believe that we're so strong and we're able to take down this like whatever this problem is all by ourselves, then we're not going to ask him for help. And the whole
Mhm.
point is that he wants us to go to him, you know?
Mhm.
And then I think
Yeah.
with the whole like people saying like we can't see Jesus and stuff, and like we can see him, but kind of indirectly. And that goes along with the Bible perfectly because Jesus is telling parables to the disciples and just to the people of the world. And they're like, they said to him, we don't understand the way you're talking. Why do you talk like this and not just give us the lesson? Because we know that there's a moral to the story, but like, why are you just saying it with an analogy? And he said, I can't tell you straight up. You know, you have to experience it for yourself. And once you do, you're going to learn something from it. You're going to pull something from it. But I can't tell you right away because I gave
Mhm.
you free will and you have your own choices. You can choose if you want to believe or not. You can choose if you want to live for me, you know? So you have to make that choice and then you'll gain understanding from it and you'll gain joy from it. And I think that's so
Mhm.
beautiful.
Yeah.
Well, Caitlin, thank you so much for being on the prayer squad today. It's been
You're
so fun having
welcome.
you. We've been planning this for a while, y'all, so I'm so glad that Caitlin was
Yep.
able to come on.
Thank you for having me.
Of course, of course. Yeah. Okay, well, the next episode is in two, let's see, not next Tuesday, but the Tuesday after that. So I'm really excited to have you guys listen to this. I hope you're enjoying the emotion series so far. And yeah, follow the Instagram. You can follow Catelynn on Instagram. And yeah, have a great 2 weeks. Bye, guys.